Welcome back to another episode of From the Trenches, where myself and my esteemed colleague, James Boyle and I get together and bring you behind the scenes at Plan First Wealth to tell you what we're working on, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're thinking, and what's going on as we build this business. So, hi, James.
Welcome back to New York.
Yes, I should have mentioned that, shouldn't I? We're here in New York again. We try and get together every so often, and we're together in New York, which is, I love this city, but boy, is it expensive.
Pricey. Yeah.
Boy.
Even lunches, everything is.
I just got coffee and water.
Yeah.
And like, okay, that's where we are.
And the last time we were here was right before the holidays.
Last time we were here was stupid expensive. We were here in silly season.
Yeah.
It was Christmas and it was just...
Hopefully it was calmed down a bit.
Unbelievably expensive. Painfully. I'm not coming back in it. We're not doing it in December again. I'll tell you that much. Right. So, not much to talk about, right?
Yeah. Calm week. Everything's looking good.
Nothing to see here. So, we're going to get into all this. Before I do, I just want to mention something. We have our first sponsor. We're the Brits in America is now sponsored by the Global Financial Planning Institute, or GFPI. It turns out we have quite a few financial advisors listening to this show, which is great.
Okay. Nice.
Cross-border practitioners and budding cross-border practitioners. And the GFPI is an organization we are a part of. We've done education events there. I've been to their conference. I'm at their conference later this month. Wonderful resource, both educational and community for cross-border financial planners.
Absolutely.
So if you're listening to this and you're either a cross-border financial planner or you're a budding cross-border financial planner, check out the GFPI. I love being a part of it. So exciting times. Okay. Let's get into this. As we are recording this, this will drop a week later, but as we are recording this, all hell is breaking loose.
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
All hell is breaking loose. We're in the midst of a trade war. How are we saying that in 2025? We're in the midst of a trade war. The US market, I should be much more specific. The US market is having a wobble doesn't do it justice. We fell back. We crossed the 10% threshold, I think, yesterday.
It a correction, right?
We're officially in correction territory. It's having a complete meltdown. People are losing their mind. Yes. You go on Reddit, you go on LinkedIn, less on LinkedIn, but certainly on Reddit and other forums. People are freaking out.
Retail, right? If we can call it that. It's sort of, the people we're talking to day in, day out, there's some nerves. There is a lot of churn, obviously, right now. And a 10% correction in 20 days is a pretty steep fall off. It is normal, though. We want to say the having a correction every year, intra-year. I think if you look back to 1980, it's 14.2%. Go back further to 1950, it's right around 14%.
What the average intra-year
max drawdown. So from the high for that year down to the trough, 14% roughly. We're not quite there yet. Not to say that it's going to run more. We'll see what happens after today's inflation report, which I know we want to touch on. But it spooks people. It gets the nerves going.
This is a spooky time.
Yes.
This is a policy own goal. Mm-hmm. It's political as well.
Very political.
It's who's your guy or gal? Who won? And if you're a Trump guy, you spent the last 4 years in the wilderness freaking out that Biden was going to blow up the economy and you might have missed out. And now you're Kamala, guy or gal, and what's going on is freaking you out. There's a very good chance you're going to sit out whatever happens now. Yep. It's a narrative we tell ourselves. Mm-hmm. By and large, the impression I'm getting is if you're a MAGA, you're okay with what's going on because you believe in the bigger picture. And if you're not MAGA, you're worried that we're about to kick off World War III.
Right.
It's perspectives.
It's perspectives, and I think leaving aside the political aspect.
But you can't in this.
Yes.
I don't want to get political.
No,
but
right.
in this particular wobble, it's not even a wobble. I need a better word. In this correction we're having, which could get worse, this is inherently political.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's why we're seeing the extent of the emotional response that I think we have done, right? Which is, it's hard to divorce these things, obviously, like you say, from the politics to what's actually happening. And that makes people even more terrified or nervous, right? Or should I be getting out? What should I be doing? What should I be thinking about? Which we're going to get to in a minute here. But
have you heard people that there's increased trading within 401ks?
Oh wow, I hadn't heard.
People are going into 401ks and trading on the back of this, which that's the stickiest of sticky money.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
We'll talk about some stats and what we can do. We've talked about before on this very podcast how many times the best days follow the worst days. I know you have some great figures for us. What I will say and what these statistics, if you can think of a key takeaway here, it's that selling when it feels right, or getting out, right? Getting scared and thinking this time is different and I need to get out of my investments. I'm going to go into my 401k. I'm going to log into T. Rowe Price, whatever it may be, and enact some trades. That is going to feel right in the moment. And very often that's the most dangerous time to give in to those instincts, to make those moves. I know you'll have some from Guide to Retirement from JP Morgan, which is really telling. I pulled one from Callie Cox over at Compound and Friends, who we're big fans of. In the last 20 years, if you sold out on a 2% down day, so we just had one on Monday, right? It was 2.7% down or something like that. And then you waited 2 weeks. So not, 10 business days, 10 trading days, you would lose out on a third of your total gains. So we're not talking about stepping aside.
Wait. So you have a 2% down day, which doesn't 2% when you and I are talking doesn't sound a lot,
right?
But a 2% down day is shocking, pretty much.
Emotional, yeah.
You sell thinking the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Yep. I'm gonna sell here and I'm gonna wait till things calm down.
Yep.
That's what everyone for
some mysterious point in the future.
It's always I'm gonna wait for the dust to settle.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna wait for the dust to settle.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks after you sold, you go back in.
Yep. A third of your total gains are wiped out.
1/3.
For 2 weeks out of the market.
Wow. Well, listen, this actually fits with this. This is something I've been aware of. I've posted about this before. It never ceases to blow my mind. Even though I know it, it never ceases to blow my mind. Impact of being out of the market. This is from JP Morgan, Guide to Retirement. This is S&P 500 over 20 years from the end of the start of 2025 to the end of 2024. If you just bought the S&P and stayed in the S&P in the index, you can't buy the index, but you know them, a 10.4% return per annum. Per annum. That's a lot. Bear in mind that includes the global financial crisis, 2018, 2022. 10.4%.
That's an
a
investment
lot.
Doubling in 7 years.
For that's a lot.
Doing the math.
You miss the 10 best days. In 2 years, the 10 best days. I don't know. Maybe what is it? 2,000 trading days in 20 years?
That makes sense.
Maybe. I don't know.
Somewhere there.
You missed 10. I had to read the small print to see if it wasn't 10 a year.
Right.
It's not. It's 10. If you miss the 10 best days out of 20 years, that 10.4% drops to 6.1% per annum. From 10.4% per annum to 6.1, missing 10 days. I can't get over that. But there's more, just a bit more context. 7 of those 10 best days occurred within 2 weeks of the 10 worst days. So that fits with Callie Cox.
Yep, exactly right.
And furthermore, 6 of those 7 days occurred the day after the worst day.
Wow.
Now, right, so here's the thing. You said before, we're in a 10% correction. It's happened in 20 days. I believe that's, if it's not the fastest that's ever happened, it's close.
I want to say 5th fastest.
Oh, right. Okay.
Don't quote me on that. I think it's 5th fastest, which is still, we have corrections. If we have corrections roughly every year like this, that's up there, right?
That's
a quick.
Yeah.
That's a very quick. Yeah.
So things happen quicker now. The 2022 was quick, and 2020, I know there's a lot of other stuff going on in 2020. This happened faster than 2007, 2008, which happened. I know there's different circumstances, but just you think about the way we're bombarded at the moment, from your phone to the social media to your TV. It is constant.
A deluge.
And things, I think, as a result, I think things happen. I think everyone's more connected, more aware of this, and things happen much, much faster.
Yep.
So we've fallen in 20 days. You can't preempt that.
No.
You just can't preempt that.
No.
But it's going to bounce back just as quickly. And all the evidence suggests that's the case as well. And if you sell out after a drop, because you can't preempt these things, other than never being invested, you can't consistently preempt these things. So you sell out after a drop, you wait for the dust to settle, you've missed the best days.
Yeah.
You've destroyed your investments. This is investing. It is painful. It is hard. It's counterintuitive. At times it's downright scary. When it's your own money, it's so much worse.
Terrifying. Yeah, it can be.
But this is investing.
Comes with the dinner. I saw that today. I saw that in a comment online. It says the corrections come with the dinner of investing, which I thought was a funny way to put it. We don't want to belabor the point, but this is something we always touch on because, like you say, this is what makes investing so lucrative in the long term, right? And the power of compounding earnings and interest on your investments. People tend to forget that if you're trying to time the market, or if you make the fatal mistake of selling out after a correction like this and getting scared away from your investments, you also have to time the way back in, right? There's two elements of this. So no one is going to be ringing the klaxon bell at the bottom and saying, okay, everyone, let's get back in. Let's jump in the pool now. It's good to go. It's going to be up and up from here. No one does that. You have to be in a place where you not only are timing the way down, which we can argue about, the possibility of doing that and doing it consistently. You also then have to decide to get. You and I aren't going to
argue on it. We're not going to argue. We're agreed. You can't do it.
Absolutely not. No. But there are still people that insist they can, and if they have the confidence to try to think that they're going to get in at the bottom, or like you say, when the dust settles, that's when I'll get back in. You might have missed the bounce back.
You've missed the bounce back. There's no might about it. The stats we just talked about, you've missed it. That's how you destroy wealth. That's not how you build wealth. I'm just going to read something from Nick Murray. This was actually written before this got this all kicked off, but I think it's so important because I think we lose sight of the fact that long-term stock market is a function of profits. It's a multiple of profits. That's what it is. That's why it keeps rising, because people go to work, make more money, are ambitious, profits grow, valuations grow with it. But in the short term, it's emotions.
Yep.
It's fear and greed. And right now we're in fear. And people lose sight of that. And that's why you have to tune out the short-term emotions and focus on the bigger picture, and which has not changed. But Nick Murray says this: no serious investor can make investment policy out of the waxing and waning of his tariff threats, nor media's hysterical responses thereto. Tariffs will end up being whatever they are. The more draconian, the worse for the American economy. This is the key part. And the great companies will immediately begin working around them, as indeed they do about everything. That's why we own them. Ultimately, it's why we believe in them. You can't. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
I will say one more thing.
Yep.
This diversification is working.
Oh, yes. That's we got a lot on that.
The US stock market is it's in a correction. It's really having a moment, not just large cap, small cap as well. Meanwhile, bonds are growing.
Yep.
And Europe and China are growing. Europe especially is having a real moment. This is why you diversified. The last 2 years, people have lost sight of this, I think.
Yep.
I saw a LinkedIn post in January, and in it, an advisor was saying, do you allocate your clients to non-US? And I was gobsmacked by the responses.
The comments.
Loads of people saying, no, absolutely not. Why bother? You get exposure to it from these companies' earnings. And I could not believe how many advisors got their clients 100% US.
Talk about geographical concentration risk and just blindly believing that the patterns in the last couple of years, the last 10 years or so are going to repeat. This is meant to be illustrative, but since Christmas Eve, European value stocks have outperformed US growth by 37%. 37% since Christmas Eve, since the last time we were here, essentially. So when we talk about diversification, it serves its purpose, and it can insulate you to an extent to shocks like this, to times when in a 20-day period you have a correction. One other point on that, I don't want this to come across as glib. These corrections can be healthy too. You talk about in the short term, markets reacting emotionally. We're off the back of a 20+% year in 2023 for the S&P 500 and another 20+% year in 2024 for the S&P. At some point, reality has to seep back in, reset expectations, shake out some of that emotion, some of that irrationality, and provide a basis of moving forward on a way that's not, distorted by, we get to let other people debate AI bubbles and things like that, and when are we going to see returns on those. But it can be healthy. It doesn't feel good when you're looking at your 401k statement and it's going down on the month. But in the long term, if you have a plan, if you're diversified, and I want to talk about tax loss harvesting, it gives you the confidence to be able to stay the course and like we say, capitalize on the long term.
We don't have to rise out the year yet.
Right.
It's February. My personal opinion is Trump is trying to get as much as possible in this 2-year window, and it's going to be bumpy. But it's still only February. There's a long way to go in this year,
Long way to go.
Yeah.
So some people, I should say, don't like to hear the advice is stay the course. They ask, what can we do in times of volatility like this? What should I be thinking about? What should I be considering? And a big one that I don't know if we've covered on the podcast that we do for our clients, certainly things you see, headlines and things like that, is this idea of tax loss harvesting.
I'm glad you brought this up because I've been getting emails when we've been doing tax loss harvesting, knowing them going to my clients, and I'm wondering, I want to do they realize that the silver lining that this is? Or do they just think, I'm not sure they fully comprehend what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I'm glad you've brought this up.
Yeah, it's a very important distinction. Number one, I think you could have better branding for the concept, because anytime anyone sees the word loss in an email, they start thinking, what does this mean?
Exactly.
Tax loss harvesting, very high level, simplistic description of it would be maintaining full exposure to the market, but also taking advantage of short-term losses or long-term losses, really. So there's two major mechanisms that you can tax loss harvest. Number one, there's selling. Here, I'll give you a very simple example. I have stock in Ford and I'm looking at stock in GM. I sell Ford at a loss. I purchase GM. I've crystallized that loss. I get immediate tax savings on that. I buy GM, so I'm still invested in the market. Use these as shorthands, right, for different indexes and things like that. The benefit is that, again, we get immediate tax savings. We get tax deferral. And we're not sacrificing time in the market. So we're not trying to time the market. We're not getting fancy and trying to overlay making decisions about what's going to bounce back when. It's purely getting tax alpha on your return in a way that improves your after-tax return. By that, I mean, think about the money coming to your pocket after you paid all the taxes owed to you by the tax man. You have a higher level of return than if you had just sat.
I love that way of thinking about it. It's trying to achieve a higher after-tax return. Another way of putting it is we have clients in a diversified portfolio, which means things are going up and down at different times. Now, before we did tax loss harvesting, let's say the US right now would go down and then it would come back up. And we wouldn't do anything. We wouldn't be worried, but we would just ride it down and ride it up. Now what happens is when it goes down, if it creates a loss, what we'll do is we'll sell that, purchase a very, very similar asset. So you're still invested.
Yep.
You're still going to ride it down and ride it back up. Only when we got to the bottom, we crystallize a loss.
Yep.
And now what that means is that when we ride it back up, you can use that loss to offset against future gains for that asset or other gains.
Yep.
Thus deferring ultimately your tax. Or more money in your pocket.
You could against ordinary income. Now it's up to a fairly low limit. It's $3,000 for the year. But you want to talk about immediate marginal rate tax savings. If you're still working, you're still earning a healthy income, as a lot of our clients are. It's an immediate benefit that the big guys, the big banks have been offering this to their institutional clients for decades, years, if not decades. We now have solutions that can do this at scale for our clients. And I really think that if you're not looking at tax loss harvesting opportunities available to you, or if you're not rebalancing at times like this, it's something that you need to consider.
100%. So if you're one of our clients and you're getting these emails from us saying we've tax loss harvested, silver lining.
Yes.
This is we're going to reduce or defer your future capital gains bills. Jolly good. We done?
Should we move to the recap? We had a barn burner of an episode, if I can be so bold, with Aiden.
We had Aiden back on the podcast. Yes, this is our last podcast. We had Aiden. Shortly after Aiden and I did a 2-part special on cross-border UK-US estate planning. The UK went and changed the rules after only 2.5 centuries.
And 2.5 months since we recorded those episodes, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, of course.
Just in time.
Aiden came back on to give us an update, and it was quite an update.
It was.
Good news, I think, all in all. I was there. I know you just listened to it again. Tell us what your interpretation was.
So if we start with the key takeaways, maybe is good, because I think the technical side of it, and it does get pretty technical. Aiden is an absolute expert in the area, and we appreciate him coming on every time he does. If you're interested in the weeds and the nitty gritty of what the changes are and how they might impact you, go and listen.
On that, I sent this to a new client who's going to go back to the UK, and I sent them and I said, look, here's that podcast episode I was talking about. Just to confirm, you don't need to understand or learn all this. I'm sending it to you in case it's of interest. We've got your back on this.
Yep.
That's how I kind of approach these episodes. That's the information. But if you've got a good team around you, you don't need to worry about this stuff. A good team will cover it.
That's worth saying too, because there are broadly using sort of broad-based buckets here. There's kind of two styles of investors. There's someone who says, I really enjoy reading about this and I want to learn more and research, and we have a ton of content on the website, obviously, that we put out for free. Or there's someone that says, look, I do my job at work and earn a living so that I don't have to worry about this, and that's where we can step in and help them. So a couple of things. It has provided clarity where before there was none, quite frankly, right? There was a lot of ambiguity. We'll talk about the 10-year rule and things like that for people who have left the UK. A key takeaway, and I think you guys landed on it at the end of the episode there, is that with that clarity comes opportunities and landmines, to use our verbiage, right? There are opportunities now with understanding more specifically how these rules are going to be in effect, how they're going to be applied to both UK assets and worldwide assets, that with proper planning in place, with the right team in place, you can take advantage of those opportunities. You can avoid the landmines. You can avoid the pitfalls. So that is a big win, even if you're on the quote unquote losing side of some of these changes, right? If you find that you might have to make adjustments to your plan going forward. A big takeaway for our clients is that now, 10 years after you've left the UK inheritance tax will no longer apply to your worldwide assets. You still have to think about planning for UK Sit-2 assets. UK pensions is something we're going to talk about in a minute here. But essentially, once you've reached that 10-year landmark, which my co-host here has.
10 full complete UK tax years.
Yep. Very much simplifies things.
Yeah. No more, what are your ties to the UK? What's your mental state? Seriously, that's what the old rules were.
Wow.
What's your mental state? In terms of how emotionally collected are you?
Yep.
Now it's simply, have you been outside the UK for 10 complete tax years? Yes. Okay. You are not UK domicile. Well, UK inheritance tax does not apply to your worldwide estate, which is massive for people in America.
Huge.
Because their estates in America are so much bigger.
Yes. Well, a lot of we keep going back to our clients, but a lot of the expats we work with were brought over here, call it mid-career, right? 30s, 40s, with a good opportunity abroad. Usually, if not immediately earning a lot more, eventually in the fullness of time earning a lot more, have built up a significant, certainly to what they might have had in UK pensions and things like that. A lot of it's going to be based in the US. The threat or the prospect of that coming into their estate from a UK perspective, from potentially suffering UK inheritance tax on their US assets, it's a pretty enormous threat or potential charge, a tax that you would be forced to pay. And now we know with this 10-year, call it a line in the sand, it provides a lot of clarity that many of our clients can rest easy, or it may help them figure out plans for the future.
Yep.
The other piece is this idea of a grace period coming back to the UK. This is enormous, and I'm interested to see how this is implemented in full. I know Aidan was joking about the acronym, right? They're calling it the FIG regime right now, I think. And essentially it means that for people who are going back to the UK, and this describes a not insignificant portion of
I think this is the most consequential for our clients to go back.
Yep. I think this cohort is going to grow too, I would expect.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. So for those people going back to the UK, there's now, and I don't know if they're terming it this technically, but call it a grace period of 4 years, wherein if you have income, capital gains arising from foreign investments, you can designate those assets, that income, those capital gains as foreign, and you do not have to pay UK tax on it, which is another fairly significant change for our clients, certainly who are thinking of going back. It's not a full stop, don't have to worry about it. Obviously, at the end of that 4 years, you then would need to consider, if you're staying in the UK, what to do with those assets. So that issue is still there, but it gives you much more of a runway. It gives you a grace period, quite literally, to address some of those things and make sure that you're either in the process or putting a plan in place to mitigate those investments, organize your assets in the right way. To make
and you still need tech advice because it's still reporting requirements.
Yes.
You can't just say, oh, designate this in my head. These have to be reported. There's a process. But this is really big for a couple of reasons. One, because this applies to Brits who go back after they've been outside for 10 years. Under the old regime, they were brought back in the fold pretty much immediately, I think. Whereas now they get the same 4-year period, which is great. But the real beauty of this for me is it gives us this grace period. It gives people an opportunity to get their house in order once they've returned to the UK. So the problem with coming to the US and under the old rules going back to the UK was once you've landed an established residency, if you've got assets you shouldn't have or are less desirable, I'm obviously thinking of PFIGs in the US, especially in an ISA, you're buggered.
Yep.
It's too late. You needed to unwind them before you came. It's done. And people, in my experience, I hope this podcast changes that, but in my experience, people move a lot of the times without consulting professionals. And then they land and they think, right, I'll get my house in order now. They go and see someone like us and we say, oh, I wish you'd come to us beforehand. Time and time again. Now, when that happens, when someone's going the other way, they have a period where it's okay, you've not triggered that landmine yet. we have a period to unwind it and get you optimal. So I think that's huge.
It helps us selfishly too, right? We have more time to put the plan in place. Just logistically, we have more time. We always, and there's still an element, like I say, of being aware of these things and taking action. But whereby before, like you say, a lot of times people with problems come to us and those problems are there, right? We have to now figure out how to navigate them. If any movement towards a longer period of time or addressing those problems before they are issues helps us, helps the client. It just makes things a lot easier and an enormous benefit. The other piece I'll say too, just to that point, is that very often, obviously ideal world, we wish people would take advice before they come to the U.S., before they step on U.S. soil, because of how many nuances there are. Sometimes people think they've gotten advice. They're being moved by a company. They're an executive mid-level position. There's a relocation package that includes some level of advice or planning advice or tax advice. And how often do we see that advice is
I've had one this week.
Yeah, outright
Big Four.
Wrong.
Big Four.
Yep.
I had a Big Four help me with
all the
taxes.
time.
There's no FBAR. There's no 8938.
Yep.
What?
And you talk about sort of step one things. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago where similar story prospect. We were talking to a couple, and this person was aware now. They had kind of done their own research. This firm had been helping them for 4 or 5 years. She had reporting fund problems. She had PFIC problems, and you never want to kind of talk bad about people providing advice in the industry. But I said, look, these are sort of day one questions that should have been caught before you even landed, honestly. And the fact that they're not, it's a shame, but now you're in the position where you have to address it. So I just want to make that caveat that sometimes, unfortunately, people think they've gotten advice and it is poor or it's just subpar.
Yeah. Next up, I've got Virginia coming back on.
Excellent.
International tax attorney, writes a highly influential blog, and she's coming back on to talk about exiting the US. Mm-hmm. This is massive. This is going to blow some people's minds. So if you're in the US and you're on a green card, or you're thinking of getting a green card, you have to listen to this one.
Yeah. This is an area that we get questions about all the time. And you made a good point. I think it was with Aiden that the lives, we talk about goal shifting, right? The lives of expats, the people we work with are inherently changeable. These are people who may think they know what they're going to do in 3, 5, 10 years, and that can blow up. And that's part of the excitement, right? That's part of the adventure of being an expat. And for me, obviously, I'm an American here in the States, but working with expats. So a lot of times, in my experience, I'm sure this echoes yours, the people who are now faced with a potential exit problem or exit tax issue, maybe 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 3 years ago, they would never have expected to be exiting. And maybe things have changed. Maybe kids have moved. Maybe grandkids are in different places. So being aware of these things, again, in advance, having more of that runway is enormously helpful. So I'm looking forward to listening to that.
You know what I always say? I've got, when I'm explaining our client bank to people, I say we've got clients who most of our clients are in the US and staying in the US. Mm-hmm. We've got some clients who've already gone back to the UK. We've got some clients who are definitely going back to the UK. And we have other clients who say they're never going back to the UK, but will go back to the UK.
Yep.
I've seen that happen. It just something changes.
And it happens quick.
Really quick.
It happens quick.
Really quick.
Say, yeah.
Let's just say one more thing on this. We don't need to belabor it because I've got Holly coming on from Buzzercott soon to talk about this. UK pensions were also brought in the UK inheritance tax net. Now, that means as things stand, it's looking like UK pensions could get taxed twice, both in inheritance at 40% and then income tax, which would give a blended rate of well above 50%. Yeah. So that's pretty wild. It's going to change the way people draw on the pensions, less so for us, because pretty much for us, we're already recommending people drain their UK pensions. Yeah. They add complexity to your US tax returns. They are more expensive and more cumbersome than their US counterparts. So for us, generally, we do recommend spending down your SIPs or your UK pensions, but this is definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah.
But something's got to give on that.
I was going to say that there's no real resolution right now, right?
No.
To the letter of the law.
It feels like an unintended consequence.
Yeah. This idea of, so for anyone, if you listen to the episode, you'll hear this, but it doesn't, I think you had mentioned it this way, it doesn't dissolve the pension wrapper necessarily, right? So you could suffer the inheritance tax at a very high rate, obviously, could be 40%, and then your beneficiaries or your children, whoever it may be, will be taxed upon it as income. Yeah. So that's a pretty enormous.
Ouch. Yeah.
Hopefully there are some massaging of the law.
I think there will.
I think there will be. That accounts for that.
All right. Should we talk about someone who we've been chatting to recently? And we hesitated to talk about this, didn't we? Because it's like an ongoing conversation. But I posted about it on LinkedIn. I was just so deflated, I think is a way to put it. What we're alluding to here is something we come across all the time. And it bugs me every time. So we're chatting to a prospect, great guy, really successful, and perfect client for us in many ways because his philosophy, he's just read the book, I think it's Die With Nothing or Die With Zero.
Die With Zero.
Die With Zero, Bill Perkins, which advocates like, and Americans are really bad at this. Wealthy Americans are really bad at this. Yeah. Spend it. Yeah. You've earned it. Spend it. You get one shot at this. Live your life. Spend it, spend it, spend it. We wholeheartedly, we have a hashtag, One Life. One Life. It's all about this. I wholeheartedly agree with that. So we got really excited because we're like, great, successful client, big life, big assets. We can really like have an impact here.
Yep.
And then it transpires that an insurance agent beat us to it a number of years ago. And he is loaded up. And I mean loaded up with whole life.
Yes.
And my heart just sank.
Yeah.
Because whole life is the exact wrong product for dying with nothing, for spending it all.
One thing, we talk about goal shift, and you're right, number one, especially in this situation. That's not to impugn what happened in the past, right? If you've held these policies 10, 15, 20
maybe
years.
That was his stated goals then.
Right. Maybe
but also, he was 35.
Yeah, that's true.
He was 35.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
How can you know? How can... Sorry, I'm getting worked up just talking about it.
It's one of those things, we've not to bring us full circle here in some kind of strange financial poetic way, but the problem exists now, right? In some ways. Now, obviously,
I don't think I'm blaming the client. I'm blaming the insurance agent who's sold the tax benefits. Oh, if I hear about tax-free income from insurance one more time.
And this is something that insurance in the way that it's meant to a lot of agents would talk about.
There's nothing wrong with the product.
Right. Would talk about
it's the way it's sold.
Tax-free bequeathing of assets and things. That is the exact opposite of what this case in particular called for.
Right. So it's not the product. Right. What he has, perfect for someone who doesn't want to spend it all down and wants to leave a big legacy for their kid. Yep. Perfect. Yep. The problem is that's the exact opposite. Yeah. The exact opposite of this guy's objective.
Yep. It was a case that was so clear, right, when we coming away from it that, okay, so these are the goals, right? This is how we would organize the investment, and this is not serving you in any way, right? It's
this guy, he had it. He's got the building blocks, or he had, and then this is just.
And it's not impossible, we should say.
No.
Right? I mean, it's
so disappointing
ways to navigate it and build a plan looking forward now. But obviously, the past is the past, but there's a way to liberate things and make sure that your portfolio is structured in a way to service what you're doing.
Do you referenced the compound before, and I remember listening to Josh talk Josh was asked on this compound, like who serves who, and he was like above 25 million. That's Wirehouse World, because they're dealing with the IPOs, so it's like captive. 10 to 25 million, that's RIAs. We're an RIA for anyone not listening. Yep. Fiduciary, mostly investment-led, planning-led. That's RIA World, 10 to 25 million. 2 to 10, he said, is a knife fight.
Yeah.
And that because you got insurance agents in there, you got the wirehouses, you got RIAs. That's where most of our clients are. Most of our clients are in the 2 to 10 million. So we are in this knife fight where we're a fiduciary, which is the only way to be, in my opinion, but hamstrings you against people who only have to demonstrate suitability, which is a radically different standard. We're fee-based versus this kind of nonsense where it's upfront commissions, which aren't disclosed. I don't think. Are they disclosed?
They probably have to be somewhere, but I can tell you that very few times is someone going to understand an insurance contract.
We're involved in this knife fight, and it just demoralizes me every time I come across it. Yeah. So I've got nothing to say. We're going to keep talking about it. Yeah. I'm going to publicize everything across. We've got Mark Mauer from Low Load Insurance coming on the pod at some point to talk about it. There's great insurance agents out there, and so Hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
So if you're insured, that's what this is.
Yeah. And the question is, what am I looking to accomplish here, and how can I, in this vast ecosystem of things out there and tools at my disposal, how can I make sure that my clients are going to do that in the most efficient, tax efficient, proper way possible? It's okay, what's the problem? And then how can I solve it using this tool over here because I get an upfront commission for it? That's usually what we see, which is unfortunate.
Okay. All right, let's move on from that. So I think we're done, aren't we?
Yeah. That was good, yeah. Pick and mix.
Okay.
The best segment, I would say, or the most fun to listen to, maybe. It's funny because I had a few coming in, but actually I want to talk about one in particular that ties back to Die with Zero, which I think is alumni to our pick and mix at some point. I haven't read. Okay, I read it. Really enjoyed it.
I listened to podcasts with him on. I like the guy.
Okay, really important ideas in that book that you don't see very often in other books in this sort of ecosystem. Right, the idea of actually spending your wealth and.
You see, I'm a lifestyle financial planning Paul Armstrong disciple.
Yeah.
This has very much been from March 2009 when I attended a presentation in the Radisson Blu in Manchester. I have been all about spending.
Yep. And I would say that's still a rare outlook. And that's why we're proud of being that. It's tends to be the opposite, right? Hoard it. So I had mentioned in a previous pick and mix, and this would have been probably sometime last year, a gentleman from Liverpool, writer by the name of Oliver Burkeman. He came out with a book. I think he was a Guardian writer for a while. Came out with a book called 4,000 Weeks. Which is the average lifespan of a human. And it was really meant to sort of talk about the finiteness of existence and structuring your life in a way that maximizes your opportunity and you spend time on the things that mean the most to you, which is things we preach to our client. He came out with a follow-up called Meditations for Mortals. It's a really cool, a lot of the same idea. So, if you've read one or the other, you might not have to double down, but I found it a really good refresher into this, what is a mirage of 5 steps down the line, my life is going to reach the stage that I really believe is the end point. And that's when I can really enjoy living. And that's when this is human nature. Right? This is what we fall into the trap of. And reading one of these books, I really enjoyed both of these, is such a potent reminder of that is a fantasy.
You just got to be happy in the moment somehow.
And when you understand that, when you know that, my to-do list is never going to be full, like blank, I'm never going to be inbox 0. That is freeing in a way. It's a way that you could say, okay, if I let go of that mirage, how can I then expend the energy I have, the limited energy and time I have, into the areas that are going to be potentially most productive or most meaningful, however you're going to interpret that. And again, it's one of those things where the book is structured in a very unique way. It's 28 entries, short entries. It's designed to be read over the course of a month. So you read an entry, you sort of reflect on it, think about it, you come the next day and read it. And I did follow that pattern. I tend to blaze through books, but this one I forced myself to go at that pace. It is such a potent reminder of the things we talk about, of the things that you might read in a Die with Zero, of the things we try to get our clients to see, that what you have is right now. That is what's meaningful.
There is no tomorrow.
Right.
So you recommend this?
I would recommend
it because
1,000%.
I'm goal oriented.
Yeah.
I'm always chasing the next thing, and I believe happiness will be and contentment will be the attainment of that goal. And intellectually, I know that's not the case, but I can't seem to override my wiring.
And I don't want to make it sound, because he doesn't come across as preachy at all. It's very practical, kind of actionable, where that instinct that you have and I have to an extent can be powerful, can be a powerful motivator, and you can leverage that to do the things that are meaningful for you, in the context of understanding that, that doesn't come. So I really enjoyed that. I've read, he has a newsletter, I think a bi-weekly newsletter. Really have enjoyed both of those books. So that was 4,000 Weeks is the first one, and then Meditations for Mortals is the second.
Okay. Mine's a little bit different. So I'm going to start with something I listened to yesterday, which was not a pick and mix for today. But what I listened to yesterday, I listened to Bill Burr on Fresh Air podcast. I love that guy.
Yeah.
He's funny. He's thoughtful. He's thought-provoking. He's kind of vulnerable now. He's just brilliant. Yeah. So I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Bill Burr. He kind of got into a bit of a tete-a-tete with Terry Gross. It was great.
Oh, wow.
It was great. Everything's cool. Yeah. But they disagreed on some stuff, and she pushed back and he pushed back, and it was just great. This is going to sound so random. Star Wars.
Oh.
So I'm not a sci-fi guy.
Me neither.
Never been a sci-fi guy. I'd seen the first 3, the original 3 Star Wars. I'd seen some of the next one, the ones that came in the early 2000s. I hadn't seen any of the more recent ones. We've got Disney. I was familiar with all these other shows right now, Mandalorian and Acolyte. And I was like, oh God, well, Disney just wrecking this franchise, whatever. But then we went to Disney last year with Roman, and there's a Star Wars world there, and it's so cool.
I've heard it's really
so
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
And then my son's been talking about Star Wars, so I started watching Star Wars. So it turns out I really, really like Star Wars films. The original 3 are great. The next 3 are okay. The one's really bad. And then the final 3 are actually, I really, really enjoyed them.
These are fairly recent, right?
Yeah. Okay. 7, 8, and 9. Mm. But I've just watched The Acolyte, and now I'm watching The Mandalorian with Roman. And two things why this is my pick and mix. Number one, because The Mandalorian is fantastic. Nice. I love it. It's one of my favorite things I've watched on TV. And I'm surprised it's got Baby Yoda in it. He's not actually Baby Yoda, but I'm surprised myself. I'm only halfway through the second. How much I'm truly enjoying it. It's got Pedro Pascal in the lead role, who's a great actor. But you never see him because he's got a mask on.
Yeah.
It's just a great show, and I'm enjoying it. But it's this ritual now where my wife takes our youngest upstairs to bed, and me and Roman, my 5-year-old, we sit on the sofa, just us two, and we watch 20 minutes, 25 minutes, half an hour of The Mandalorian. And it's just this thing we have.
Yeah.
That he looks forward to it. I look forward to it. And do you know what? You know how I find parenting really hard, especially when they were young kids. The relentless the relentlessness of it really took it out of me. But now they're in this age where it's just magic. And every day, it's still hard, but every day it gets more and more rewarding. And this moment is just so special.
That's cool.
And I know one day it'll be gone, and I'll miss it. And so I am in the moment enjoying it. It's just this wonderful moment of like I'm really enjoying this TV program, which completely
took you by surprise.
Because I'm not a sci-fi guy. I love Alien, the movies, but that's it. But I'm loving this program, Mandalorian. I really recommend it to everyone, even if you haven't seen all the other Star Wars films. Mm-hmm. And I'm having this like really fantastic special moment every single day with my 5-year-old, who's soon to be 6, and it's just that's my pick and mix.
And that's something that he'll remember forever too.
I hope so.
But I don't have kids. I don't know if the listeners know that. But are there? I'm bad at knowing what's good content at what age. Are there moments that does he get frightened at all? Is it like that?
Well, he was terrified of Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Oh, okay. That scared
until
me
recently.
Yes.
I know the younger one also likes it. Well, I don't know. The best. I've talked about it before. Bluey is just the best show going. There's also Steven Spielberg's involved in this cartoon called Camp Cretaceous, which is
I was going to ask
really good.
Is that Jurassic Park related?
Yes.
Okay, because that's like, how old is
Roman's 5?
5. So I probably was watching Jurassic Park, and I remember being terrified, but loved dinosaurs. Loved enough that you kind of tough through it.
The cartoon's great.
Nice,
really great. And Roman's currently massively into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I love, obviously. So that's good times.
That's having like a resurgence, I think, right? Then they
I don't know,
with a couple new movies, or
we haven't seen them if they have. We just watched the old ones.
There was one from a few years ago, I think, it seemed popular. Yeah, I mean, that's excellent. First of all, the memories that you're making.
Go Ninja, go. Vanilla Ice.
Yes, yeah. And pizza, right? It was always...
of course, we're pizza mad in our house.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's good. That's a nice light note to end on.
Yeah.
I know we started...
From tariff war, mayhem, nonsense, to go Ninja, go Ninja.
That's a normal path for us in these things, right? We land on. Excellent. Well, thank everyone for listening. We, that next episode with Virginia, I know is going to be a big one, I'm sure, and one we refer to often. So certainly we recommend you reaching out about that, and don't hesitate to reach out to us. Right? You have our emails, Richard at Plan
Please.
First Wealth, James at Plan First Wealth. We read everything that comes in. We appreciate the feedback, questions that you have. We're happy to introduce segments on the show to cover them, and we really enjoy doing this.
All right. Cheers, James.
Take care.
Let's go get some lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye-bye all.
Bye.